Very much, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm Mike Barnato. I know that's the case because it says so here. This is a story of recovery, and included in it is meeting Tony, and included in it is a big change in my mindset and my behaviour. So there's those three elements. Well, what was I recovering from? It started with a phone call, which I answered thinking it was probably spam. And it said, "This is Dr. Fortin's secretary about your follow-up appointment." And I said, "Yeah, it's Mike Barnato. You want to change the date?" And she said, "No. But when you come, bring a friend." So it was one of those calls. By the way, is Mike's mic working okay? Can you hear me all right? Yeah. The back, everywhere?
The mic is only for the camera, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
Say again?
A bit louder. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
So,
it's good.
We're okay.
Go a bit louder.
You want me to speak louder?
Yeah.
No, because there'll be too much mic. You're fine.
So that was a diagnosis of esophagus cancer, cancer of the gut. And 250 doses of chemotherapy followed, 125 doses of radiotherapy, and 10 procedures. But I mean, this is not a talk about cancer. Who wants to talk about that in the afternoon? But there were just two things which, in hindsight, stick in my mind. And they're relevant to the recovery. Now, the thing about chemotherapy is it's very low tech. And this bit of medical equipment saved my life. Well, to be honest, it wasn't actually this bit. I mean, the actual bucket had NHS written on it, but it was a bucket like this. And that was because I was so frightened. I'm an awful patient, petrified of needles. They couldn't actually get a drip into me unless I put my hand in a bucket for 20 minutes of hot water to try and relax. The other bit of treatment, very high-tech, radiotherapy, as some people around here will know. And I went off to see these two technicians at Marsden. And they said, "Mike, have you got any tattoos?" And I said, "No, I don't like tattoos and I'm petrified of needles." And they said, "Well, that's a pity, Mike, because we're going to have to tattoo you permanently to mark where we're going to shoot these gamma rays at you for the radiotherapy. Great big crosses," they said. And I said, "Look, guys, I don't want needles. I certainly don't want crosses. I'm not religious. None of that, please." And they said, "What's your blood group, Mike?" And I said, "I don't know. I haven't been in hospital for years and years. You must be on the notes. Could you find out?" The guy came back and he looked me in the face and he said, "Mike, your blood, it's green. Your blood, it's green." And I was horrified. It made sense to me. When you're having chemotherapy, your face goes yellow, your hair goes white. When you're having the infusions in hospital, your pee goes pink. It seemed quite logical that my blood had gone green. I turned into a rainbow or a chameleon or a plant. It was chlorophyll, I didn't know. And he saw the look of horror on my face. And he said, No, Mike, just joking. Be positive." And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the only time I lost it while I was being treated. And I said something like, "Guys, I'm sure these are very funny jokes, but I've got a 40% chance of living, and this isn't the time." He said, No, Mike, be positive. That's your blood group." And that message of be positive, after I no longer dived, but survived, was what I took with me when I went to the gym. So the phone call was on the 20th of May 2010, and around about 2012 I went to David Lloyd's gym and started doing what you do in the gym when you're by yourself, doing a variety of different things. And after a while I started to think, do I need a trainer? And the reason was there were three things that were playing on my mind. After that treatment, which was the most intensive treatment they could give me, you know, how strong was I? What could I do? What shouldn't I do? It wasn't totally clear to me. The second thing was that I developed very bad habits. I developed a clotted cream custard diet. Marks and Spencer's clotted cream custard. Now a pot is half a litre and it has 1,500 calories. And it's wonderful stuff. And when you're living on a liquid diet of essentially doctor prescribed liquid diet, it was almost the only proper food that I could eat. And I'm not advising it, by the way, to everybody here. We have a nutritionist here who will tell you it's not the great thing. But it was quite hard to get off that kind of diet. I mean, I'd had it while I was being treated because I could drink 2/3 of a pot in one go, and that's 1,000 calories. And the main danger with esophagus cancer is you can't eat, and you just get weaker and weaker and weaker, regardless of what the medicine does. So it served me well, but I had to come off that kind of rather bad diet. And the other reason I thought about a trainer was because I'd injured my knee. Now, I'd injured my knee 3 times, but the last time I'd been off any exercise for 1 complete year prior to getting cancer. I had a very bad knee injury in martial arts. And so, in effect, for 2 years, I hadn't really exercised. So those 3 things together made me think, do I need a trainer? And I also thought, well, I'm really on my second life here. Maybe it's something to invest in. So I'm at David Lloyd, and there are about 20 different trainers there. And I sort of wandered around looking at what they were doing and talking to different trainers about different things. And in the end, it came down to 3 things. My 3 criteria for choosing a trainer. And it's obviously my choice who I'm going to choose. The first one was trust. I actually wanted a trainer who trained people my sort of age. I mean, it might be great to have someone who's training bodybuilders or people in their 20s. You know, I'm a few years past that. So Tony was training people who you might describe as senior or mature, and I spoke to some of those. My second criteria was expertise. I really wanted to recover movement. I wanted to play golf. I wanted to go back to martial arts. I wanted to do a whole range of things. I didn't want to just do one narrow thing. So I wanted someone who could cover all that variety, and I thought he could. And the other thing comes back to connection, which Jean mentioned. You spend, if you train twice a week, you spend, say, 2 hours face to face with someone. I mean, that's more than many people spend with their partners. You need to have a connection. It needs to be fun. So maybe not in the same way as your partner, by the way, just to be clear about this. So that was how I got involved with Tony. And the third thing is mindset and behaviour. And I'm just going to illustrate how my mindset and behaviour changed in terms of 2 different exercises. So first, mindset. Now the first exercise is Lotus, the Lotus pose. Now I know you know about the Lotus. Do other people know what the Lotus is? Yeah?
It's behind. Sort of.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That sounds like a pantomime. It's behind you. Okay. Now the significance is this. When I was young, I could do the Lotus. Lots of young people can. They don't need any training. They can just do it. But for 30 years, I hadn't tried the Lotus. And just for people who are not clear, you basically take the foot from one side and you put it across the thigh on the other side, and then you've got to get the other foot on top. Now it helps if you're sitting down, of course. So I hadn't tried it for 30 years. And Tony occasionally would say to me, "Do you want to try the Lotus, Mike?" And I'd say, "No way. Knee injury, 30 years on. I'm keen, but I'm not foolish." And I think it's probably the 7th time he very gently suggested it. And I'd said, "No way." There was a young guy at the gym who overheard the conversation. And he did what I don't like. He said, "I'll show you." I don't like show-offs, and I don't like that. And whereupon he sat on the floor, he did this perfect Lotus. And as if that wasn't bad enough, hi, and if that wasn't bad enough, he went, "Gada, your turn." And by then, a few people had gathered round, and they said, "Why don't you try?" And I got kind of embarrassed, persuaded to try it. So off I went, got one leg over, I'm trying to get the other leg. And the young guy then said, "That's not bad." And what he really meant was, "That's not bad," in quotes, "for an old man. I think you might be able to do it." And I kept going, and I just about did it for a second. Wasn't very comfortable, but I managed it for a second. And that was the start, ladies and gentlemen, of the change in my mindset. Because after that, I can do rather more advanced versions, as you can see. But for 30 years, I hadn't been able to do that. And the thing about mindset, it's really your attitude, your beliefs. And there's this thing about a closed mindset. When you don't try things, you stick with what you already know, you stay in your comfort zone. And the comfort zone's a wonderful place, but it's like a beautiful garden, but nothing much grows there. And I started to think, I'd got out of my comfort zone, I'd managed to do this. I hadn't believed I would be able to do it. And I also started to think how silly I'd been. So if you think of silly, S-I-L-L-Y, self-imposed limits lessen you. And that's what I'd done to myself. And I remembered this analogy of the elephants being trained in Asia. You got a baby elephant, at night they chain it to a tree trunk round its foot, whatever you call the end of an elephant. And the elephant pulls and pulls and pulls and tries to break that chain. And it's only a baby elephant and it can't. And its foot gets very sore, raw. And for the rest of its life, I am told, the elephant remembers that. It never tries again, even when that elephant now weighs 2 or 3 tons and could snap the chain. It's conditioned not even to try. And so that was what went through my mind, and when my mindset started to change from a kind of fixed mindset to a much more open mindset. What can I try? What does it matter if I don't succeed? Why did I hesitate to even try it? So that's been a really big change for me. And that's mindset. The second thing, and the final thing, is changing behaviour. And to give you an example of one other exercise, press up. Do you all know what a press up is? So for those who don't, I mean, you see a lot in the gym, you lie face down, you got your hands under your chest, you push up. It's a standard kind of exercise. Now, I could always do a press up. But when we started training, we tried lots of different kinds of press ups. There's lots of different variations, some much harder and so on. We spent a lot of time doing those, and I suppose without realizing it, I started to get better. And when you think about getting better, we tend to think of giant leaps. We tend to think of, a giant leap. But actually, if you steadily improve in the right direction, it's a bit like compound interest. You steadily improve. When you look back, you've come quite a long way. And one day Tony said, "Well, your press-ups are getting to be quite good now." I think that's what he said. He possibly was slightly more grudging than that, I don't know. Why don't you try plyometric press-ups? And I said, "What's that? What's a plyometric press-up?" So I said, "Well, remember when you push with your hands? Try and get your hands off the ground at the same time." Now, I started trying to practice that, and it took several months, but I started to get the hang of that. Because remember, my mindset was now open, I was willing to experiment, I was willing to try. And then one day, he said, "Why don't you try a flying press-up?" A flying press-up. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, you get your arms and your legs off the ground at the same time, starting from a press-up position." And at first, I thought a flying press-up. Yeah, my arms and legs are off the ground. But instead of doing it that way, you're going to try and do it that way. And my initial reaction was to revert back to my old mindset. The concept of trying to do something called Superman press-ups. I'm not going to go there. I mean, I might try and do something that Lois Laney's girlfriend could do, but not a Superman. And I tried and I tried and I tried to get the idea. But you've got to coordinate your hands and your legs. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I've got very little coordination. You know, I can't tell my right hand from my left hand. 3 separate martial arts instructors have said to me, no, Mike, use your other right hand. I just can't copy movements. For example, nothing about me is coordinated. So we kind of left it. And then just before Christmas 2017, Tony said, we come up to your last session of the year. What are you going to finish on? Try and finish on something with a bit of oomph, a bit of a bang. And I found myself saying, do you remember those flying Superman press-ups? We'll do those. And we'll do them next week, and we'll do them head to head. And just to finish, ladies and gentlemen, when I had the diagnosis back in 2010, I felt I was diving. I was lucky enough to survive, and now I feel I'm thriving. I can do stuff in the gym I couldn't do when I was in my 20s. I'm back at martial arts. I immediately retired when I was diagnosed with cancer. I am now back doing management and marketing advice and other consulting. And to finish, just before the tea break, we're going to do a little demo. And I will need a tea break afterwards to recover. And after we've done this, it may be a few seconds before I get up, but don't worry about that. But if it's several minutes, then luckily we have a doctor here. And I also need to put my lucky hat on to do this. So Tony's going to lead me through, and we'll just take off the mic. You probably won't hear me grunt so loudly if we do that. I'm going to hand over to Tony. Thanks for listening. And here is a little demo.
Right. Okay. Should we do it together?
Why not?
Yeah.
We'll have a swig of water.
Do you guys, can you see on the front?
I think at the back,
Wow, this is ambitious.
you might need to stand. If you're able and willing.
Just at the back. Those of you
Only
who
at the back.
can see the front.
Because we're going to be on the floor here. And please don't ask me to repeat this.
Right. Shall we show them?
Here.
Okay.
Can we ask you just to move? There's a little bit more space. What we're going to try and do. Do you want to explain or do you want me to?
Well, shall we show them a video? Or shall
Or do
we?
you want to do it?
Let's just do it.
Do you want us, let's put it this way. Do you want to see the video or do you want us to try and do it live now?
Do it live.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that. Okay. Let's just see which side to go. Yeah, shall I go on this side? So what you'll see us do is one press up, and they'll be quite deep. Our bellies will hit the ground. It'd be good if you could shout 1 when you see that. And then 2. And then on the 3rd one, our bellies will hit the ground.
Yep.
And we'll take off. And not for very long, but you'll see our arms and legs come off the ground. So can we just have a practice now? Okay. We need to encourage you. Well, he doesn't, but I do. So can you just do an ordinary press up? I'd like to hear you shout out now 1 when his belly touches the ground. Because if you can't do that, I don't think we're ready. And then 1 more. 2. Okay, stop. Thank you. So you're going to do that. Count 3, and then we're going to try and take off. And what you might hear is that. Okay. There we go.
Thank you, Mike.
Can you all see? Okay, come this way a little bit more. Yeah. Okay.
Guys, be careful at the back.
Are you okay? Are we clear of everyone before we
Can you
go?
push back a little bit? So shake it.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
1, 2, 3.
This is in the slow motion.
Would you like a cup of tea?
Yes.